1982, whenever I graduated from the police academy, the colonel came in. He said, he called my name, Coleman, and I stood up. Yes, sir. He said, do you know where Lancaster County is? I said, no, sir. And then he said, throw that boy a map. That's where you're assigned. Well, I was pretty excited. I didn't know where Lancaster was other than looking on the map. But I was pretty excited about knowing where I was supposed to report to. That was Friday, and I was supposed to report on Tuesday. Pretty excited about that. And so I went and told my dad about it. And my dad was also on the highway patrol at that time. And when I told him about it, he just, kind of nodded. But my mother told me later, she said, your dad told me that you'll do fine anywhere they send you, but he's hoping they don't send you to Lancaster County. Well, that kind of burst my balloon just a little bit, but what I found out whenever I went there was they were having some serious problems with selection of juries. And it had to do with some illegal things. They didn't realize they were illegal until I had been there a while. But it all finally came out to light. But people were doing illegal things and selecting juries improperly and having people found not guilty in an improper way. But anyway, what I learned from going there was that because of the way things were, I ended up having to prosecute lots of people with jury trials. And there were a lot of collisions there. I think trying to think of the slot type of gambling, the slot machine gambling that they had. That's kind of where that started in South Carolina. That was going on big time. Just a lot of things happening in that county that I had never really heard of before, but it gave me so much experience while I was there. I did things and things happened to me that a lot of troopers might go a whole career and not have. As a matter of fact, I went to the academy for an in-service training, and I was having lunch with a trooper that had been on 20 years in a different county. And we were talking about things, and he told me that in his 20 years, he'd only had like 5 jury trials. And he asked me, he said, and I'd only been on probably for like a year. And he said, well, how many have you had? I said, well, I think I've had at least 20 jury trials just in the last year. And his mouth just fell open. He couldn't hardly believe it. But I found that through life, and as I got into the training unit and all the things that I had to teach and instruct, I had the experience by being in a county where a lot of things were going on. And so I realized that what may have seemed like a very negative assignment at the time was something that God was able to use in my life to help me as I moved along. Well, my name is Richard Coleman, and I'm the pastor at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Lexington, South Carolina, and it's great to spend just a few moments with you today. Well, the Apostle Paul is in prison in Rome, and he is writing a letter to the church in Philippi. They have sent a gift to him, and he's wanting to respond and let them know how much he appreciates that and appreciates them and appreciates their prayers. One of the things that Paul tells them is that he said, everything that has happened to me. In other words, he's talking about being there in prison in Rome. He said, everything that has happened to me has helped me spread the gospel. You see, Paul could have looked at his circumstance and said, woe is me. I mean, here I am in prison. Here I am. I don't have my freedom. And why in the world has God rejected me? And why has God left me? And all of these things that we could be looking at that half full glass instead of realize a half empty glass instead of realizing that it's actually half full. Paul recognized, he said, everything that's happened to me, every place that God has placed me, he has done that so I have a better opportunity to spread the gospel. And then Paul goes on, he says, because of my prison time, he said, the prisoners and the guards have become Christians. So where he was in some of the worst circumstances, he was still able to let people know who Jesus was and the importance of being a Christian. And I can just assure you that if Paul had a gloomy attitude and a negative attitude, those people would not have been interested in the Jesus that he was serving. But because of the attitude that he had through the circumstances that he was going through, people recognized that yes, it is important to be a Christian, and I want Jesus to be a part of my life. I don't know where you are in your life. I'm confident, though, that either you have been someplace that you wish you were not, you are there now, or you're going to be. There are times when you end up places that maybe you don't know how you got there, or maybe you do, but you sure wish you weren't there. But it's how we deal with that is so important. And through every circumstance and every issue and every problem that happens in our life, we need to recognize that God can use this for His good. And that's the attitude that we need to have. It's not about me. It's about God. As Christians, God should be first. They asked Jesus, if I can only do one thing, if I can only obey one commandment, what's the one thing that I really need to do? And Jesus said it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And Jesus said, and second, just as important, is to love your neighbor as yourself. You see, we are supposed to be concerned about who we are, because He said to love ourselves, but we're supposed to love others equally and put God on top of all of that. And so when God's number one in our life and we look around at our circumstances and see, oh no, how am I going to handle this? Then the right answer is going to be, I don't know, but God does. And that's where I'm going to put my faith and my trust. Turn it over to God and say, God, I'm yours. Use me however you can use me. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. May you truly open yourself up this week to God's use. Thanks for taking the time and watching today.